Lord, just can't seem to get the hang of it toward me. I don't know. If you don't start going towards you, it just doesn't work. I didn't quite dare flip it. Okay, now I'm just about ready to finish up the toy sack, but I wanted to point out when I had was stitching along and getting ready to finish, you want to stop, and this is true whether you're doing blanket stitch or any type of stitch, stop every once in a while, but especially before you finish, and make sure your piece is going to be flat. Because if you don't pay that much of if you don't pay attention when you're getting to the end and you've been holding it and it's all crinkled up, let me show you. If I stitch that down right now, when I was done, this would be all bumpy and bubbly. So you've got to make sure you stop, flatten everything out, make sure there's not bumps and bubbles and wrinkles here and there. I mean, this would actually not look bad if it looked a little bit bumped up, because it would, I feel it would make it look, you know, even more realistic. But you don't want your background to end up being wonky. So you have to make sure, oh, my needle keeps coming unthreaded. You have to make sure that you see where you're at before you finish your final stitches, to make sure there's not gathers and bubbles and such as you finish. Oh my heavens. I'm going to be known as the person whose needle comes unthreaded constantly. As you can see right there, there is still a little bit, oh, well, I don't know if you can see it or not, but I should have put this piece down a little sooner and flattened it out, because I almost had a bubble in there that would have caused me to have to take some stitches out and make some adjustments. Probably should stick my piece of paper under there, because I'm leaving this flat and I don't want to I don't want to, gosh, I do that all the time. I apologize. I'm leaving it flat and I don't want to grab the piece of wool that I have laid down underneath this. All right, and there is our last stitch on the toy bag. Pack. Santa's pack. Once again, of course, my needle came unthreaded, so we're just going to leave it unthreaded. I'm not going to bother to rethread it to make a knot and travel a little bit. I mean, I did make a knot, but I don't want to worry about traveling. And there we have it. This piece is definitely going to need to be ironed before we make it into the pillow. Once you gather it up and hold it in your hands for the stitching, it tends to make it a little bit more wrinkled and in need of an iron. Sometimes when I do just the blanket stitch, it doesn't always need ironing. Actually, the pumpkin gal that I created. I didn't need to iron her before I finished her. Which I guess I could have. It wouldn't have hurt, but it wasn't necessary. Okay, now let's see. Should we do the cuff or mitten? Of course, because I took my, remember I had them lined up. And I took that away to neaten up my table. The mitten definitely will be, well, I mean, I guess it doesn't really matter, but I'll do the mitten next and then lay the little cuff over it, and I think that will look nice. This I'm definitely going to have to glue down. I wish I had my other mitten because this one seems a little bit pinkish for my liking. And of course I had 2 mittens, but do you think I can find them now? Of course not. It'll turn up after I start stitching this one down. It's just a little too, well, it's not quite as pinkish as it looks because the lighting is making it look a little pink. Let me shut this off for a second and see. Yeah, it's just fine. This light on my camera stand is wonderful for stitching because it's really very bright, but it tends to make, like I mentioned in one of the other videos, it makes things look different than they actually are. They're not as bright as they appear. Okay, so this will go right here. And I'll just shave just a little off there. So it looks like it is under somewhat. It'll look a little bit better once I get it stitched down, but let me hold it down. Okay. Be careful not to cut myself too long of a thread this time. Last time it hassled me quite a bit, that overly long piece of thread. So I do not wish to have that happen again. Oh my gosh, see what I mean? There's the other mitten. And you know what? I'm going to take this off. All right. This one is just a little bit darker, and I just like it a little bit better. It's probably way more glue than I'd need, but probably should have used my serrated edge scissors for that. That's much nicer. put something heavy on that for a minute while I thread my needle. All right, now let's see where I want to begin. I've got myself in the same situation I have when I do my blanket stitch. What direction do I go? Let me see if I can manage to break myself of that habit. I feel like I need to move my chair a little. Take that out. Please excuse my somewhat ratty attire. I have my favorite wear around the house old sweatshirt on. All right, then I'm making sure that my thumb stays right on the edge of the handle so that it actually looks like it's going to go underneath. And if you're wondering what I mean by this, just look at the template. That's just how when we hold something, of course, the top of the hand would go over it and the thumb would go under. So I'm just trying to make that as realistic as I can. looks good, I think. All right, that's the last stitch on the cuff. I'm going to leave my needle threaded and leave it, just set it aside for a second. Figure out which piece I'm going to use for the cuff. I'm just trimming this one piece, making it a little bit more round. Making a mess all over my wool. I don't feel like that's long enough. I gotta... All right, so the cuff piece that we cut out, you may have to recut that. Because the piece we originally cut isn't going to work. I mean, this is clearly too wide, but I'll make it a little bit more narrow in just a second, but I just wanted to get this distance correct. Then we'll cut it out, round it up. Hopefully we won't ruin it. There, I think that, of course there's a piece of hair there. It's actually a piece of wool, but I think that's going to look good. Definitely need the cuff, which I didn't think it did, but I'm just going to try one more thing. Make it a little bit thinner and see if I like it thinner. I think I do. Okay, so that's going to work. Nice thin little piece. I really want to make this a little bit more rounded. Sorry, I don't want to trim it over it because it'll make a mess. All right, put a dab of glue on here, and I don't know if you can tell, but I made it, you know, gave it a little character, made it a little bit more realistic. Gave it a bit of a swerve and curve. I might not stitch this fully down. I feel like it needs to stay bumped up. We definitely need the edges down. I don't know if I could get away with that though. I guess I'll, with this whip stitch here, it might be light enough where it's gonna allow it to stay bumped up a smidge and look take some wide stitches here. I think someone's here. I swear someone's conspiring against me with this filming lately because I have had more interruptions than you can imagine. There's that. There we go. So I'm really just tacking it down lightly. But I'm keeping my stitches close together on the ends here. I might have been wrong. May have just been a squirrel that he was barking at. Down into the back. I'm not going to do my knot just yet. I just want to make sure. I think that looks very good. I really like it. Now I can do my knot. Typical me fashion, my back starts out nice and neat and tidy, and then as I go along, I must get sloppy, I guess. Let me stand back and give him a look. I like him. In retrospect, I sort of wish I had done maybe green mittens or some other, maybe the darker green of the arm, or maybe the color of the collar and whatnot. Because I feel like the mitten blends in a little too much with the handle of the bag, but I guess I could have done a blanket stitch on that mitten. But you get the gist. And it's primitive after all. All right, we are closing in on the finish line here, at least for the pieces that we need to stitch down, and then we'll have the tree left. All right, let's move on to the feet. Pull this up, make sure it's in there. All right, here is one boot, and then the second boot is the same as the first, but with no heel, because the heel isn't going to show. At least that's the plan. I feel like I have a couple pairs, remember, because I was worried I'd lose one. I feel like that's correct. Or would it be this way? No, no. Let me take a step. I think I'm going to use the larger of the two. You wouldn't think this would be such a big deal, but I think that works. Let's get them glued down before I change my mind. I like that these are actually two different colors as well. I feel like one of them needs to be at an angle, but I can't decide which one should be. Gosh, I've done it again. I've changed my mind. Oh my word, okay. This one with the slight heel needs to be there. This one we're going to cut down a little. And of course, this will lay down first, and then this over here. I think that's how. I have them farther up, I guess. This isn't as easy with the wool, so it makes them stick up a little bit too much. That seems like the right placement. I think that seems about right. All right. So this one first. Get this stitched down. These are so thin, and this is a looser weave wool, so let's hope this cooperates. I think the key to a looser weave wool, or stitching a looser weave wool with the whip stitch, is you don't really, you just very lightly pull, or you don't really even pull. You just lay your stitches in place. So you don't tug on it at all. This color really blends in with this green. You can't even see the stitches. I want that a little, I'm trying to keep them somewhat close together. It's such a thin piece of wool that I feel like you really, it won't have any shape if I don't at least get it tacked down with quite a few stitches. Definitely doesn't look like a boot to me, but hopefully when we get the other one in place, it will look a little more bootish. All right, I'm not going to bother knotting off my needle. Yeah, that's going to work. All right, now let's see, where did I leave off so that I can... There we go. Here we go again with the stitching toward me troubles. Good gracious. For crying out loud. Oliver. Pardon me one moment. I'll be back. Someone's here.